So now we're to a point where we can load data into R and start working with it. Because at this point, you should have enough knowledge to work with the data set itself, which now we'll go through in this and the next video. So when it comes to data, there's a lot of different ways to bring it into R. You can bring data in directly from a database if you happen to have connection information on it. You can bring data into R by using an application programming interface, which connects to an outside source like, let's say, Twitter or Merriam-Webster Dictionary or Yahoo Finance or Fred, the Federal Reserve economic data, or any one of these. So in other words, you can connect and tap into outside data sources and bring the data in. The most fundamental way, though, is through the use of a CSV file, which is denoted as comma separated value file. And the way that CSV files work is by specifying the data in table format, where each line in the file represents a single entry in the data set, and each entry is separated by the same number of the same number of commas. And basically what you get is a set of data in table format, where the new lines separate the individual entries and the commas separate out the values assigned to each variable or each property of the individual. So here I have a file which I've put up on Blackboard for you to work with if you so wish, which is the credit.csv file. The first thing that you want to do in R is figure out where your working directory is. And as you can see on the screen, we had done this before by using the getWD function. GetWD is going to figure out where R is looking for files on your own system. For mine, I have them in this folder here, but yours, of course, will be different. You're going to want to put your data files in that folder that R is specifying. You could change your working directory by using the setWD function and then explicitly writing the full folder path to a different folder. Alternatively, I think there's a way to do it in the system, but I honestly forget off of the top of my head. Set working directory, and then, okay, so you can choose a location as well. The working directory is basically where you're putting all of your data files and everything else that's going to be stored related to R for your project, and as well as where R is going to output everything if you intend to output anything. So anyway, we have figure out where your working directory is and put the file credit.csv in that folder. So for me, you'll notice that on my file system in Dynamic Systems, I put the file here. When you do that, you'll be able to very easily load in that file. Now, the next thing we're going to do is load that file in. So let's first see what that file looks like. You're not going to be able to do this for all files, by the way, because some of them are too big. But this one you can definitely see. So if you take a look here, you'll notice that, and it's hard to see because my screen is just not that big enough to accommodate all of the variables. But as you'll see, this file, and this is true of most CSV files, the first line specifies the column titles, and that specifies what property is being stored in that specific column. So the first column will be checking balances for individuals. The second column is going to be loan durations in terms of months. The third column is going to be credit history, and so on and so forth. When you go down to the first line here, after the titles, you get to the actual data itself. So as you can see, each data point is separated by a comma, right? And we have the same number of commas for each row. Each row represents the information for a specific individual. Each column represents the collection of all individuals' information for a specific property. So we can input, so long as the file is of the same format, namely that you have names up here in the first row, and all of the other rows have the same number of columns. You can import this data into R quite easily. So we can do this by using the read.csv function, and then we provide it the name of the file we would like to read in. There's other options that we can use. Some CSV files may be denoted with semicolons instead of commas. I know some state governments' databases happen to do this from time to time. Sometimes it doesn't have labels, so we might want to explicitly give them labels. Sometimes there's just a lot of other nuances to the data file we want to play around with the input. But since we're keeping with just very, very basic type of data here, we're just going to do as simply as read CSV. And what we're going to do is store that in a variable, which I'll just call data. And let's run that. And now that we ran it, R brought it in. So we can actually check to see what is in that. You'll notice, by the way, in the variable list that you have a list of variables that you have called before in the past throughout your previous commands here. Here you'll see we stored the data frame in data, and we can kind of check to see what's in that by just clicking on it. And as you can see, R put the data, had read the data from the raw text format and brought it into a nice looking format here, similar to what we see in a Microsoft Excel. My recommendation is to never do this on large data sets because it will freeze up your R. That's kind of the whole point of moving away from Microsoft Excel, by the way, because Microsoft Excel is old, outdated, chunky, and it can't handle a lot of data. R can handle a lot of data, but we don't like the visual aspects of it like this because it slows our system down. That's sort of the whole point of moving away from the data. But nonetheless, you can get a quick view of what the data looks like. This data set is a data set of people's credit information and whether or not they were approved for a loan. I don't know whether or not they were approved for a loan. I'm sorry, whether or not they have defaulted on a loan. We tend to use this information in machine learning models and more advanced statistical models to determine whether or not somebody should be approved, somebody's application should be approved for a loan or not. So basically, we use advanced statistical models on data like this to look at the characteristics of the individuals, try to find some patterns in them, and then come up with an equation we can use so that when somebody's new application comes in, we can get out the probability of whether or not somebody is going to default on their loan given some information that we're looking at or not. So in other words, we can score whether or not somebody's going to be a high risk or low risk of defaulting. But anyway, that's usually the purpose for working with these types of data sets. Right now, what we want to look at is just more from a descriptive analysis. But anyway, that's how we load data into R. There's a few other things we can do once we load data into R. We can take a look at, for example, just the first few top rows. Let me just make something clear again here. Try not to ever use this feature. Two features that you shouldn't try to use. This one And another feature, which I don't even know where it is, to be honest with you, but it's somewhere in here. Some people online will tell you to go use this file, this tool. It's an import data tool. I don't want you to do that. While it is, there it is, import data set from text, etc. Yeah, that's pretty handy and everything, but at the end of the day, I want you, with regards to importing data, to learn the commands, because there are some advanced approaches that you'll find yourself getting yourself into, where you'll have to load data automatically from files, and point and click is not going to save you there. So it's just better to get used to loading data in by going through the commands itself. If it's a small data set, it's not that big of a deal. But hey, we're in the 21st century. We don't really have small data sets anymore. We're working a lot with big data sets. So with that stated, try to avoid using the import on the point and click. Try to avoid clicking these, because that will slow your system down. In fact, I should just get out of there. I should also get out of here. We don't like to open files in R that are big. We just like to import them and work with them. Now that you have your file into R, you can take a few steps to see or inspect what that data set comprises of. The first command is called head. Head will look at the first few rows of the data set, just so you can get a sense of what that data set looks like. The other one, of course, is names. And by the way, what did it import it as? It imported it as a data frame, as you can see. It has row names, although the names in this case are just numbers, and it has different features or attributes of that data set. Now that you hopefully know how to work with data frames, you should be able to quite easily pull information out of here. For example, remember that we said we can pull specifically only all of the attributes of a specific nature here by using the $ and then just typing the name of the name. So let's say we want to get all of the default information from the individual. We can do the $ default. Suppose we only wanted to extract out all of the information pertaining to, let's say, checking balance and amount. Okay, it didn't let me do that. Why not? Did I spell? Oh, I spelled balance incorrect. Very good. So there you can see you pulled out only specifically those two columns from here. Suppose you wanted to only pull out all of the data where the individual's age was bigger than 40 years old. Okay, so as you can see, you've managed to do that as well. So here's the point. Once you've brought the data frame in by way of read CSV, you've taken data that's stored in a text file, you've brought it into R. Now there's very quick things we can do to inspect that data and run different types of analysis on it. That analysis we're going to cover in the next and final video of our second lecture here.